I've heard you talk about heaven as an ecstasy and joy beyond our wildest imaginings. Why do so many people grow up thinking heaven will be boring? I still catch myself thinking that heaven will be this place where we forget about earth and just float in the sky with not much to do. It reminds me of a cartoon that I show my students of this guy sitting on a cloud. And he says something like, I wish I brought a magazine. Why do we think heaven will be boring? Well, because most of us were raised on what I call the starvation diet gospel. And the starvation diet gospel basically says your desires are bad. They're only going to get you in trouble. Repress all that stuff and just follow these rules. Well, if that's all Christianity has to offer, I don't want anything to do with it. I remember a professor of mine, actually a friend of Pope John Paul II's, Monsignor Lorenzo Albacete, said, religion is either the sincere quest for the satisfaction of all the deepest desires of our hearts, or it is a dangerous, divisive, harmful waste of time. I don't know about you, but I'm hungry. I am looking for something. I am searching for some kind of super abounding fulfillment of all of my deep longings and desires. And I have searched this world over, and nothing in this world can reach that hunger. I get little tastes, but then they fade, they go, they don't last forever. And I remember this quote from C.S. Lewis. He says, if we find in ourselves desires that nothing in this world can satisfy, then it only makes sense that we're made for another world. I can relate to that. Heaven is for hungry people. But if religion was presented to you as this kind of starvation approach, your desires are bad, stuff all that, follow the rules. Well, the gospel held out by the secular culture is going to be much more attractive. And I call that the fast food gospel, right? Fast food because it's the promise of immediate gratification for those desires. Hey, if the only two choices are starve or fast food, I'm going for the chicken nuggets because I'm hungry. But if that becomes your steady diet, eventually the grease and the sodium is going to catch up with you, right? I'm exhibit A there. And you can look at any number of people who just gorge on the pleasures of this world. It doesn't reach the deeper place. I found in my discovery of Pope John Paul II's Theology of the Body that Christianity is not a starvation diet. It's an invitation to a banquet. In fact, an infinite wedding feast, as sacred scripture describes it. And to rehabilitate our understanding of heaven, and of course, we have to recognize we're never going to understand it fully. Eye has not seen, ear has not heard what God has ready for those who love him. But we need to get a proper image of it or sense of it, of its attractiveness. We have to have a proper pleasure principle. And those three approaches, the starvation approach, the fast food approach, and the banquet approach, they all have different pleasure principles. For example, starvation approach. If it feels good, it's sinful, right? The fast food approach. If it feels good, do it. The banquet approach. If it feels good, it's a foreshadowing of an infinite pleasure to which this little pleasure only points. Or we could put it this way. Pleasure principle of the starvation approach is to negate the world's pleasures. The fast food approach inflates the world's pleasures, and the banquet approach sublimates the world's pleasures. Now, what does that mean? To sublimate means to lift it up and make it sublime. We see in the scriptures that the Pharisees accused Jesus of being a drunkard and a glutton. Why? Well, we can conclude that nobody enjoyed good food and good wine as much as Jesus did, because he saw it not as the thing he was looking for, but he knew how to sublimate that. He knew how to experience the pleasures of this world as the sign that that it is a sign of something infinite that he knew for all eternity in the joy that he had with his Father before the world began. We need to think in those terms. We need to learn how to sublimate the world's pleasures, to rejoice in the good things of this world, not as our ultimate fulfillment, but as an indication of what our ultimate fulfillment might look like. And when we get over our hang-ups and issues and all the leftovers from that starvation approach, and when we get over all the inflated understanding of the world's pleasures from the fast food approach, then we can rejoice in all the right ways with St. Bridget of Ireland, for example, who describes heaven as an infinite lake of beer. Yes, that's an image of heaven I can relate to. Why? Because I love a good beer here and now. Well, that's a sign of something. That's a sign to me of an infinite reality, and that's what St. Bridget is getting at. Also, when we sublimate the world's pleasures, we can get over our prudishness and fear about bodily things, and we can rejoice with the prophet Isaiah, who describes heaven as where we will all drink from the abundant breast of the new Jerusalem and find comfort in the overflow of her milk. Jerusalem is the dwelling place of God, right? And this is fulfilled in Mother Mary, who became the dwelling place of God, and who in the spiritual order, the order of grace, she becomes our mother, the mother of all the living. That image of drinking from the abundant breast of the New Jerusalem and finding comfort in the overflow of her milk, if we are in touch with the primordial hunger and thirst of the human heart, is this not the common denominator of all humanity? The moment we are born, we hunger and thirst for mother's breast. That's an image of heaven I can relate to. And if we sublimate the world's pleasures, we can get over our puritanical fears, and we can rejoice with the lovers in the Song of Songs and all the saints throughout history who have recognized in the erotic love poetry of the Song of Songs a glimmer, a taste, that ecstasy of love in the Song of Songs between a man and a woman in their intimate embrace becomes for us a little glimmer of the ecstasy that awaits us in what the saints describe as nuptial union with love eternal. What does this tell us? I mean, it tells us so much. It tells us that what we're really looking for when we pursue the pleasures of this world in disordered ways, we're looking for heaven, but we're looking for it in a disordered way. We're expecting the foreshadowing of heaven to be heaven itself, and that's when we get ourselves in trouble with the pleasures of this world. The pleasures of this world are not evil in themselves. God made them all, and he made them all to be so many little signs, little sacraments, if you will, of an infinite ecstasy and bliss that awaits us on the other side. But if the only two choices we have here for our thirst and hunger is the starvation approach and the fast food approach, well, then heaven is just going to be totally boring. And that's why we get songs on the radio, like I heard growing up, from Billy Joel, like this. Remember this Billy Joel song from the 70s? Only the good die young, right? That went something, how did it go? Well, they say there's a heaven for those who will wait. Some say it's better, but I say it ain't. I'd rather laugh with the sinners than cry with the saints. The sinners are much more fun. What is he really saying there? He's saying, I'd rather eat greasy chicken nuggets than starve to death because the fast food is much more fun than starving. And if those are the only two choices, he's absolutely right. But if there really is a banquet, an infinite wedding feast that corresponds super abundantly to that cry of the human heart, okay, then I need to learn how to sublimate the world's pleasures, to recognize them not as ultimate fulfillment itself, but as a sign that points me in the right direction. Lord, help us to recognize the desire for heaven that you have planted in our hearts. Nobody said it better than St. Augustine. You've made us for yourself, O Lord, and our hearts are restless until we rest in you. When we are in touch with the deepest desires of our hearts, heaven is not boring, because there ain't nothing boring about the ultimate fulfillment of those desires.